Hi guys, let's answer some Qigong. All right, from episode 70, finally the idea of holistic going through different... Oh, that's a question I didn't get a chance to finish answering last time. Okay, so it says, Adam, finally, the idea of a holistic process going through different phases reminds me of a logical medicine. Oh, it's about the standing, okay. I heard from one Ichuan teacher that Jamzhong, or static post-training standing, should not be practiced for too long, and not even daily, as long standing would not develop cardio function, would affect... actually, I'm going to break your question down right now so I don't miss anything. So no long standing because it doesn't develop cardio function. It would affect somewhat negatively blood pressure, despite what some Ichuan teachers said, and also because the brain would be receiving less oxygen, okay? Another negative point of long post-training or static standing is that it would affect our daily body coordination, walking, the interplay of spinal curve, as opposed to a prolonged erase curve. So standing should be a complement with other protocols. Again, the idea of a continuum composed of different activities. All right, thank you for your question. This is a good question because prolonged standing actually confuses a lot of people. So I'm going to answer your question point by point here. Just give me a second so I don't miss anything. And, okay, the first point is, standing should not be done too long, you said. When I studied with Professor Zheng, who was a head medical professor in Beijing, who taught me standing, he agreed with you. He says you should not stand for more than 1 hour. But these rules of Qigong, you have to listen to your body. 1 hour is just a rough estimate. But you don't do prolonged standing for more than an hour because at a certain point, you already charge your body with energy. And if you stand anymore, you're now overly taxing your muscles in your joint if you stand too long. So yes, I agree with that, and I've been told that as well. Your second point, long standing would not develop cardio function. That's true and not true, because one study they did where they took a bunch of people and did post-training and other Qigong, when they end up doing rock climbing, I think some of them were athletes, and also riding a bike, they actually noticed they breathe better, which makes a lot of sense because anyone that has done a lot of post-training, usually after a couple of years, providing they stand at least half an hour a day, and providing that they never skip a day, they're pretty disciplined and they practice a lot, they'll notice their lungs open up and they breathe a lot better. So in that case, I'm going to have to disagree with the idea that long standing doesn't develop general cardio. However, I completely agree with you if you're talking about sport-specific cardio, like sprinting or punching a bag or kicking or anything fast-paced, right? So that's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic activity, right? If you're talking about sport-specific cardio, then I agree with you. Standing definitely doesn't improve that to the degree where it makes any real difference in a real game, in a real fight, or any real function. So if your idea is, hey, I want to be able to, because my background is martial arts, so I use that as a metaphor. If you want to be able to fight for 3 minutes in high intensity work, standing is not going to help you with that type of cardio. That is true. And they also test that with the Chinese soccer team because they were testing post-training with them. So that part's true. Okay, next. You also said it would affect somewhat negatively blood pressure. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that because I started standing 30 years ago, but I was very serious about it 5 years ago when I started doing Qigong full time, 2 to 4 hours a day, every single day, never skip a day. Because when I did martial art for 40 years now, 24 years was full time, 6 days and 4 nights a week. I was obsessed with it, I overtrained, and I ended up having all sorts of nervous system problems. I was getting sick all the time, I couldn't recover, I got brain fog, dizzy all the time, throwing up all the time, can't recover from illness, high blood pressure, allergies were going worse than usual, feeling extremely weak. At one point I was starting to lose fine motor skills, dropping things all the time. At one point I couldn't even walk across the street. I had good days and bad days. Sometimes I can't even count to 20. So depending on the doctor I went to East and West, right? Western doctors depending on the discipline, gave me different labels. Some said I had a post-concussion syndrome. Some said I had depression. Some said I have a burnout syndrome. Some said I have stage 4, what would they call it? Stage 4 overtraining syndrome. So they gave me all different kind of labels, right? And nothing fixed me. I went to a neurologist. I went to a normal doctor, sport medicine doctor, post-concussion therapist. I'm probably forgetting a few more, but none of it helped me. And then I went to Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbology, twin na, and they gave me a different label to say weak qi, adrenaline fatigue, all sorts of labels, classical Chinese labels, but none of it can help me. It made me feel better for a little bit, and then a couple of days later, it went back to crap. Because I was out of option, I decided to practice Qigong full time. Because I remember the story of a lot of the masters that at midlife got really sick, and what heals them was Qigong. So I wanted to see if that's true for me, and I was really hoping it was. So when I started standing a lot, every symptom that I described earlier, like can't count to 20, brain fog, getting weak all the time, throwing up all the time, high blood pressure, losing fine motor skills, feeling extremely weak, all these symptoms went away within a few months because I was standing. I started 10 minutes a day, I think it was, and I worked it up to about an hour a day every single day, not including the sitting and stuff. So it completely healed me. So I'm going to have to, maybe it's not true for everyone, but for me, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. That is negative on the blood pressure. Because after I did a lot of standing, when I did take my blood pressure, it actually dropped. It returned to normal. So I can't agree with that. All right. And also keep in mind, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I think you're wrong. I can only talk from my own personal experience, my teachers, my classmates, and my students, which is roughly about 200 people. But that's still a small number in the world, of course. Okay, next, you also said when you do a lot of standing, the brain will receive less oxygen. Again, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that, because when people do prolonged standing, it's usually boxed into one method, which is usually framed as advanced internal martial art or advanced internal development, something that is advanced. But standing actually originated from Taoism. And in Taoism, standing is not considered advanced at all. In fact, it's considered kindergarten. So that's the first thing, this mislabel of modern times. And because of that, in modern post-training, it's usually looked upon as the container stage, which is you learn to use imagery to hold a ball, you hang on a string, you let the vertebrae in the spine stretch and open, and then you inflate the horizontal plane. You sit on a ball so you can relax your legs, line up your joints, spiral everything into the ground. As you get better, you feel deeply into the ground. And then you open up your pores, you open up your joints, you stretch and elongate the bones without moving physically, but feeling the energy inflating inside, as well as all the planes, right? And of course, your tongue's touching the roof of your mouth, you're smiling, and then you're breathing. Usually people consider that post-training, but in reality, or advanced internal martial art development. But in reality, in classical Taoism, that's considered a warm-up. After that point, if you keep standing without any effort on your own, the ball that you're holding will start to charge. Later on, that was synchronized with the feeling inside your body. Around that point, the pores will start to open by themselves. If you keep standing after that, providing you have a pretty good teacher that can show you how to navigate this, because it won't happen unless someone help you to navigate this, unless you're the 0.1% genius, right? But for most people, no. If at that point you keep going with proper instruction, then pore breathing will naturally start to happen. If you keep training and your teacher shows you more navigation, the pore breathing will turn into bone breathing. At that point, you'll start getting really powerful, and usually right before that point or right after, spontaneous movement will start to happen from the inside out, where your nervous system starts to shake involuntarily, and you start to release deep tension that was stored in your body for months or years, right? If you keep going after that, and this usually only happens with pre-commonness systems, then everything you were taught in sitting meditation gets thrown into your standing, and spontaneous will happen no longer from the inside out as a detox, but from the outside in, the idea of the presence. At that point, you start to cross the line that standing becomes heaven and earth, that you're absorbing from the vertical plane in and out. That's when Christian mystics, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism start to become pretty much one thing, the idea of spontaneous grace. You won't hit that with modern post-training though. And this is precisely the reason why modern post-training in classical time, that kind of continuum work is really considered a warm-up. Not trying to offend anyone, just laying out the classical syllabus. In that case, if you hit the classical point of even the bone breathing and pore breathing level, then I'm going to have to respectfully disagree that you're receiving less oxygen. In fact, you will probably have too much oxygen, and feeling dizzy and getting high, like you have too much oxygen, is a very, very common symptom. Like a lot of students that first learn how to post-train in a way that they open up the field with the heaven and earth stuff that I just talked about, past the level of popular container work, one of the things they always ask me is, how come I feel like I'm getting high? And how come I feel dizzy afterwards? The reason is because they're taking in too much oxygen and they are literally getting high. At that point of practice, you need to start doing a lot more than usual rooting and grounding work to bring everything back down. So the idea of not getting enough oxygen, the opposite is going to be true if you train properly. Okay, next thing. Another negative point of prolonged static standing is that it would affect our daily body coordination. Walking, for example, because of the interplay of spinal curve as opposed to prolonged erased curves. I really don't have a positive or negative response to that because I've never experienced that. I stand a lot and I walk fine and I move fine. And in fact, it enhanced my martial art ability. But I'm not quite sure if that's because of standing, because I also lift weights and I also do a lot of stretching and I also do a lot of martial arts. I also do a lot of moving and walking Qi Gong. So for me to make a fair answer to your question, I would need to isolate just standing to see if there's a negative effect on my walking. So far, I haven't found any evidence, but I don't really know. Unless I isolate it, which I'm not going to do that clinical study. All right. Next question, the last one you have is, let's see, so standing should be complemented with other protocols. Again, the idea of the continuum composed of different activities. 100% yes, and that's why I talked about a few episodes back that in classical time, Qigong was a holistic study that you're not allowed to isolate one thing. You had to learn the laying down Qigong, the standing Qigong, the sitting Qigong, and the moving Qigong. Because with just the static standing and just the static sitting is too much stillness and it's not good for the body. Prolonged stillness, as modern science has proven. So in between your stillness session, you have to insert movement. That's why the movement Qigong has to be learned. The second reason is, if you do moving Qigong properly, providing you're working with archetypes, and providing that you're working with this idea of the presence, or the Ling, or the Tao, and then you're absorbing things from the vertical plane, it'll be much, 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 much easier for you to learn spontaneous movement from the outside in during moving as compared to stillness. For the very fact that you're already moving while you're doing moving Qigong. So once you learn this from the moving Qigong, you can dump it into sitting and standing instead of trying to get spontaneous movement from standing, sitting, which might take you 10 years. Whereas if you learn it off moving first, it'll only take you 1 year. So it's that kind of idea. So that's why moving Qigong's got to be learned. Sitting Qigong and standing Qigong definitely cannot be skipped. A lot of people skip standing Qigong in China and just do sitting, especially in the lineages of Zen. Most of them break their body and they have to get the Taoists to heal them historically. Like the famous Zen master Hakun was healed by a Taoist doctor or a practitioner because he had Zen sickness. You can Google that, so I don't have to go into it, but he pretty much had a nervous breakdown because all he did was merging and sitting and not enough grounding. So he had to learn the standing Qigong to heal himself, right? And modern science did a good job talking about this, that prolonged sitting by itself is really bad for you. That's why a lot of high-level monks would not do standing practice and only sitting, and they do like 20 years retreat, or some of them are really hardcore. They usually come out in a wheelchair. They can't even walk, right? So just sitting meditation is not good. You should learn the moving and standing. Just standing is not good because then all you do is jack up your power. It's not going to do anything for your emotional or spiritual healing. You can still stand all you want and still be anxious, depressed, angry, egotistical, bad temper. All these human suffering conditions that you have would not be solved by standing. Standing is just to charge your body, classically speaking, so you can do a lot of sitting. And the whole point of sitting is to heal your emotions. When I was going through a really rough time, like I was talking about before with my body, and they thought I had post-concussion syndrome, overtraining stage 4 syndrome, adrenaline fatigue, burnout syndrome, depression, actually not depression yet, all these physical problems that I have, standing cured it. But the problem is, when I was under so much suffering with my body, and I couldn't heal it at first before I did the standing, when the body shuts down and gets really, really weak, the damage that it is in, at least for me, turned emotional. My body got really weak and I couldn't treat it properly. It turned emotional suffering. For the first time in my life, I experienced anxiety and depression severely. And so when I started doing standing Qigong, like I said before, it completely healed the physical problems like adrenaline fatigue, chronic fatigue, can't recover from sickness, losing fine motor skills, brain fog, all the stuff that I talked about before. Standing completely cured it, but it didn't do anything to help my anxiety and depression. Sitting practices was designed for that, and it completely cured my anxiety and depression within 6 months or 4 months. I can't remember the exact time, because it's designed for that, right? So to answer your question or to comment on your question, you're 100% right based on what I said last episode you said, and that is standing, sitting, moving, and laying down Qigong is holistic for a reason, and it should be taught in that manner and not isolated. That's my number one worry for people that doesn't have a good teacher and they try to wing it themselves. A lot of times they end up just doing one of the 4. And it's a good way to hurt yourself, right? So you got to be careful about that. Anyways, we're out of time. For those that are interested in learning how to do these things, you can join the Taoist community. We train once a week together in the live stream classes. There's also a student library where all the classes is stored in the library. So if you miss a class, it's not a big deal. There's a student community forum. That's the place we go to for the students to leave other messages so I can customize all the Qigong techniques for them. And I say this again every episode, and I'll keep saying it. Unless Qigong is customized and adaptive to the individual, it has a good chance of not working that well. So rather you train with me in the Taoist community or you're training with other teachers, try to keep that in mind. Try to take your time to find a teacher that can help you customize this stuff so you can do it safely and you can recover faster. Anyways, guys, see you next time. Have a good day.